Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Sit back, relax, and listen closely, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. It happened on a Saturday afternoon in late October. Our extended family had gathered at my parents' house in the suburbs for what was supposed to be a casual get-together. The air smelled of roasted chicken, cinnamon pie, and the faint chill of autumn leaves drifting outside. I had been carrying a tray of glasses from the kitchen toward the dining room when I felt a sudden, hard shove between my shoulder blades. My balance snapped away from me like a pulled thread, and before I could process what was happening, my feet missed the top step. I crashed down the staircase, the sound of each impact echoing like the hollow strike of a drum. My vision blurred, and the sharp pain shooting up my back made breathing feel like pulling air through shards of glass. When I finally stopped moving, I was sprawled on the floor at the bottom of the stairs, my cheek pressed against the cool wood. The room around me seemed frozen. Just a moment before, the house had been buzzing with chatter, clinking cutlery, and distant laughter. Now all I could hear was the ringing in my ears and the muffled gasps of a few cousins who'd witnessed the fall. My brother, no, not just a brother but the same tormentor I'd endured for years, stood at the top of the stairs, his mouth curved into a grin he didn't bother hiding. His name was Ethan, and at that moment, he looked like he had just won some twisted game. "Relax, it was a joke," he said, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. I didn't have the strength to respond. The pain radiating through my spine was overwhelming. My parents, Richard and Elaine, rushed forward, but instead of horror, I saw irritation flash across their faces. "Clara, honestly, you're so clumsy," my mother muttered under her breath as my father helped lift me slightly. They didn't ask Ethan why he'd pushed me. They didn't even scold him. This was nothing new. For as long as I could remember, my injuries had been explained away as accidents, my bruises excused as my own fault. I was taken to the hospital in my father's car instead of an ambulance, my head leaning against the cold window, trying not to cry from the throbbing ache in my back. Every bump in the road sent a fresh wave of agony shooting down my legs. By the time we arrived, my lips were pale, my hands shaking. The nurse at the reception desk took one look at me and called for a wheelchair. Within minutes, I was in the examination room, a team of medical staff buzzing around me. Dr. Mary Ann Coe, a calm yet sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, ordered an MRI almost immediately. I remember lying there inside the machine, the rhythmic clunking sounds echoing in my head. My mind was spinning not just from pain, but from the years of silence I'd been forced into. For so long, I had convinced myself that speaking up would only make things worse. Ethan had been careful, calculated. He never left marks where others could easily see, and when he did, my parents were always there to cover for him. When Dr. Coe returned with the results, she had a strange look in her eyes, not just concern, but something heavier. She pulled a chair beside my bed and spoke in a voice that was gentle but firm. "Clara, I know you came in today because of your fall, but your MRI shows more than just a recent spinal fracture. There are multiple older injuries, fractures, healed rib breaks, signs of repeated trauma over a long period of time. Can you tell me how this happened?" For a moment, I just stared at her, my mind desperately searching for the safe, practiced answers I'd given for years. "I'm clumsy," I began, my voice barely a whisper. But her eyes didn't waver, and in that stillness, something inside me cracked open. Tears burned my eyes, and the words tumbled out before I could stop them. I told her about the shoves, the punches, the way Ethan would trip me when no one was looking, the insults he'd hiss under his breath, the times he'd twist my arm until I screamed. I told her how my parents would dismiss every incident, sometimes even laughing along with him. Dr. Coe didn't interrupt. She just listened, her face grave, her hands resting still on her lap. When I finished, she stood up and said, "Clara, what happened to you is abuse. This is not your fault. I need to inform the authorities immediately." Within an hour, the hospital had contacted the police and child protective services. My parents, who had been waiting in the corridor, were furious when they learned what I'd told the doctor. My mother stormed into the room, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Why are you making up stories? Do you know what you're doing to this family? My father's jaw was tight, his glare cold. You've always been dramatic, Clara. Stop embarrassing us. But their words no longer had the same grip on me. I was still terrified, still aching, but for the first time, I felt like someone an adult with authority believed me. The police officer who arrived, Detective Harris, took my statement carefully, asking questions with a patience I wasn't used to. As they spoke with my parents in the hallway, my aunt, Margaret, appeared at the doorway, her expression a mixture of worry and determination. She lived 2 towns over and wasn't often at our family gatherings, but when she was, she'd always given me the kind of quiet attention my parents never did. Clara, she said softly, coming to sit by my bed, I've seen things over the years. I've taken pictures, just in case. Bruises on your arms, that split lip last Christmas. I didn't want to interfere without proof, but maybe now is the time. I could barely speak, my throat thick with emotion. You kept them? I asked. She nodded. All of them. And there's more. Your cousin Lily filmed today's fall on her phone. She caught the whole thing. Ethan can't hide from this. The relief that surged through me was almost dizzying. For so long, I'd felt like I was screaming underwater, unheard, unseen. Now, there was proof. Proof that could stand against my parents' denial, proof that could show the world what really happened behind the polished image of our family dinners and holiday cards. That night in the hospital, I lay awake listening to the soft beeping of the monitors. My back throbbed with every small movement, but my mind was alive with the possibilities of what could come next. Fear still clung to me, fear of retaliation, of facing Ethan in whatever legal battle was ahead, but there was also a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. For once, I wasn't alone in this fight. The next morning, I woke to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the faint hum of hospital machines. My body felt heavy, every movement sending a sharp reminder of the damage Ethan had caused. But something else weighed on me, the knowledge that, for the first time, the truth had been spoken aloud, and there was no taking it back. I had opened a door that couldn't be closed. Aunt Margaret arrived early, carrying a folder so thick it looked like it could burst open at any second. She placed it gently on the bed beside me. I brought everything, she said, her voice low. Dates, photos, notes. Every time I noticed something wasn't right, I documented it. I thought maybe I was overthinking it, but I knew in my gut you weren't safe. I opened the folder slowly, my hands trembling. There they were, images of me at 13, 14, 15, each with injuries I'd passed off as accidents. A faint purple bruise on my collarbone. A gash on my temple hidden under my hair. Finger-shaped marks on my upper arm. I felt my stomach turn, not from the pain in my body, but from the memories flooding back. Every picture had a date, sometimes with a small note in her handwriting. Thanksgiving. Clara seemed withdrawn. Avoided eye contact with Ethan. Christmas Eve. Clara's lips swollen. Said she tripped. Detective Harris returned later that morning, his notepad in hand. He asked if I was ready to provide a full, detailed statement. I glanced at Aunt Margaret, who gave me a subtle nod. I told him everything, the earliest incidents I could remember, the way Ethan's jokes were never harmless, the escalating physical harm. I told him about the constant verbal taunts, the way he'd mock me until I cried, and the smug satisfaction on his face whenever my parents sided with him. When I mentioned that my cousin Lily had recorded the fall, his eyes lit with professional interest. If we can get that footage, it will be critical, he said. Margaret immediately called Lily, who arrived within an hour. She handed her phone directly to the detective, showing him the video. The sound of my scream as I hit the stairs made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to watch. The recording clearly showed Ethan shoving me with both hands while I held the tray of glasses, then smirking as I tumbled. While they reviewed the evidence, my parents arrived. My mother's face was tight, her jaw set as if she were bracing herself for battle. "This is ridiculous," she snapped at Detective Harris. "Siblings push each other all the time. She's exaggerating, she always has. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, his silence speaking volumes. Detective Harris's tone was cool but unyielding. Mr. and Mrs. Whitford, the MRI results, combined with the photographic evidence and this video, indicate a pattern of abuse. This is not a matter of sibling rivalry. Your son will be taken into custody for assault. I saw the moment my mother realized the situation was spiraling out of her control. Her cheeks flushed, her voice rising. You can't just arrest him. He's in college, he has a future. Margaret cut in sharply. And Clara doesn't? Do you have any idea what she's been through under your roof? The tension in the room was suffocating. 2 officers entered, moving past my parents to escort Ethan, who had just been brought in from the waiting area, out of the hospital. He didn't resist, but his glare burned into me as if promising some future reckoning. For years, that look would have sent me cowering. Now, I held his gaze, my hands gripping the bed rail, refusing to flinch. The next few days were a whirlwind of statements, paperwork, and medical checkups. Child Protective Services got involved, assessing whether it was safe for me to return home. Unsurprisingly, the decision was no. I was discharged into Aunt Margaret's care, moving into her cozy 2-story house with its floral curtains and the faint smell of lavender in every room. It felt strange at first, like I was intruding, but she made it clear I was welcome for as long as I needed. We met with a legal team she'd contacted, a group of women-led attorneys specializing in abuse cases. They listened without judgment, their questions sharp but compassionate. The evidence you have is strong, one of them, Ms. Howard, explained. With the medical records, photographs, and the video, plus your testimony, we have a solid case. And if there are others who can speak to Ethan's behavior, it will only strengthen it. I hesitated, then remembered something. He had girlfriends. 3, maybe 4, over the past few years. I overheard arguments sometimes. They sounded scared. Margaret took note, and within a week, the attorneys had reached out to 2 of Ethan's ex-girlfriends. Both agreed to testify. Their stories were eerily similar: controlling behavior, verbal degradation, moments where his temper spilled over into physical aggression. It was like peeling away the layers of a rotting fruit and finding the same decay beneath. Meanwhile, the backlash from my parents intensified. They called constantly, leaving voicemails that swung between pleading and venom. "You're ruining this family," my father said in one message. "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" My mother's voice in another was sharper. "You've always been jealous of Ethan. This is your way of getting attention." Each time, Margaret would take my phone and delete the messages before I could listen again. "They're trying to drag you back into the old narrative," she told me. "You don't owe them anything." Word about the case spread quickly in our community. Social media posts appeared, some in support, others accusing me of destroying my own family for revenge. The victim blaming stung, but it also hardened me. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything, not just memories of the abuse, but how it made me feel, the isolation, the confusion. It was my way of reclaiming the story, putting it in my own words before anyone else could twist it. One evening, as I sat on Margaret's porch watching the sun dip behind the trees, Lily joined me. "You know," she said softly, "people are talking, but you're the one who's finally telling the truth. That scares them. Don't let it scare you." I looked at her, at the sincerity in her eyes, and felt a spark of resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who had been silenced in their own home, every victim whose bruises were hidden behind excuses. I wasn't just exposing Ethan. I was exposing the system, the family, the silence, the complicity that had allowed him to keep hurting people. The court date was set for early spring. Between now and then, there would be more interviews, more meetings with the legal team, more nights lying awake wondering what the verdict would be. But one thing was certain: Ethan wasn't going to be able to charm or intimidate his way out of this. Not with the truth laid bare for everyone to see. The day of the trial dawned cold and gray, the kind of morning where the air feels heavy with unspoken things. I stood outside the courthouse with Aunt Margaret and Lily, my palms damp despite the chill. The building loomed above us, its tall glass doors reflecting a sky that seemed undecided between rain and sun. Margaret's hand rested on my shoulder, steadying me in a way my own parents never had. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with hushed voices and the faint rustle of papers. Ethan sat at the defense table, wearing a pressed navy suit and an expression carefully crafted to look innocent. My parents were behind him, whispering in his ear, their faces drawn tight with worry. For a moment, I caught my mother's eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at me with tenderness when I was small. Now they hold only resentment. The prosecution opened with the video. The sound of my scream filled the room, sharp and raw, followed by the sickening thuds of my body hitting the stairs. Ethan's shove was undeniable with both hands, full force, no hesitation. A murmur swept through the gallery as the footage ended. My attorney, Ms. Howard, followed with the MRI scans, highlighting not just the fresh spinal fracture, but the pattern of older injuries. She spoke with precision, each word a deliberate strike. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand slowly, the stiffness in my back a constant reminder of why I was there. I told the court about years of so-called jokes that left me bruised and bleeding. About the times Ethan would wait until no one was watching to push me, trip me, twist my arm. About the way my parents would dismiss my pain, sometimes even laughing along with him. The defense tried to paint me as clumsy, prone to exaggeration. They brought up my grades, my dramatic tendencies, even the times I'd tripped in front of relatives. But Ms. Howard countered each point with evidence: Aunt Margaret's photographs, Lily's video, the testimony of Ethan's ex-girlfriends. One by one, they took the stand and described the same temper, the same cruelty hidden under a charming mask. By the time the prosecution rested, the weight of the truth filled every corner of the room. Ethan's composure cracked, his jaw tightened, and he avoided my gaze. My parents looked smaller somehow, as if the glossy image they'd built for themselves had begun to crumble. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady: "We find the defendant guilty of aggravated assault." A collective exhale rippled through the courtroom. The judge sentenced Ethan to 8 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 5. Then came the charges against my parents for child neglect. It wasn't as long or dramatic as Ethan's trial, but it was enough. They were sentenced to probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. More importantly, they were legally barred from contacting me without my consent. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of relief and grief. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase the years I'd lost, the trust that had been shattered. Still, there was something profoundly freeing in knowing that Ethan could no longer hurt me or anyone else for a long time. I moved in with Aunt Margaret permanently. Her home became a place where I could finally breathe without fear of footsteps behind me. I started therapy, slowly untangling the knots of guilt and shame I'd been carrying for so long. At first, it was hard to talk about the abuse without shaking, but each session chipped away at the power those memories held over me. In the summer, I began speaking at local schools and community centers about sibling abuse, a topic so rarely discussed that people were often shocked it even existed. I shared my story carefully, not to dwell on the pain, but to show others that they weren't alone, that it was possible to step out of the shadows. The first time a teenager approached me after a talk, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "That's my brother, too," I knew I'd found a purpose beyond my own healing. When autumn came, I enrolled in college, choosing a major in social work. My first day on campus, walking past the bustling crowds of students, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't dared to feel in years: excitement for the future. I made friends who knew me only as Clara, not as the girl from the news, not as Ethan's sister. People who laughed with me, studied with me, and treated me like I mattered. Ethan's letters started arriving a few months into his sentence. I never opened them. Margaret kept them in a box in the attic, just in case I ever wanted to face them, but I doubted I would. Some doors, once closed, are better left that way. My parents sent messages through relatives, mostly asking if I was ready to move past it. I ignored them. Moving past something doesn't mean pretending it never happened, it means refusing to let it define you anymore. Now, as I sit at my desk, the late afternoon sun spilling through the window, I think about that day at the family gathering. About how a single shove, meant to humiliate me yet again, ended up breaking the silence of years. Ethan thought he was pushing me down. In reality, he pushed me forward into the arms of people who believed me, into a life where my voice couldn't be ignored, into a future I never thought I'd have. I'm not the same girl who lay on the floor at the bottom of the stairs, gasping for breath. I'm stronger now. I'm louder. And I know that even when your own family refuses to protect you, there are people out there who will. Sometimes they're relatives you never expected. Sometimes they're strangers in uniforms. And sometimes, they're the version of yourself you've been fighting to become all along. Moral lesson. No one has the right to hurt you, no matter their title in your life, not a sibling, not a parent, not anyone. Abuse thrives in silence, in the spaces where victims are told they're exaggerating is willing to listen, to document, to stand beside you. My story isn't just about pain, it's about the power of being believed, the courage to speak even when your voice shakes, and the possibility of rebuilding from the ashes of what was meant to destroy you. If you're in a situation like mine, know this: you are not too sensitive, too dramatic, or too weak. You are surviving something most people can't imagine, and that alone makes you stronger than you realize. Healing is not a straight path, but every step forward matters. Surround yourself with those who see your worth and protect your peace fiercely. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of courage, revenge, and redemption. Your voice matters, let it be heard.